If you could state your first and last name, your position, and how to spell your first and last name.
I'm Alex Popachak. Popachak is spelled Popichak, and I'm the general manager of WPPJ. I do a whole mess of stuff here.
Cool beans. So, how much manpower does it require for a successful Rockathon to occur? How many people are involved? How many man hours do you think would be estimated in that?
Oh, that's a rough estimate because what you've got is for 67 hours straight, we were broadcasting. And for the most part, it's different people all of those hours. So I want to say we ended up getting something like 50 to 60 different people involved throughout the process. And that does count, of course, the bands that are coming in and any roadies that they brought along, and the IT department for helping us get that kind of thing set up. But I'd say in total we had about 60 individuals involved with the actual maintenance and run of Rockathon, counting the folks that were on air, the folks that wandered by and grabbed a microphone and were a part of it, because Rockathon is not only the fundraising aspect, but it's also like a community experience for us. So anybody that's in on that community, it's one of those kinds of things that everybody's contributing. But like in all, I'd say we had about 60 people in some way, shape, or form involved, but we also had a key core of like 10 individuals that were steering the this is when bands would be, this is when students would be on, and also collecting donations and that kind of a thing. I'd say there's a core of about 10 of us that were working the floor at that point. So yeah.
Excellent. Could you give me a step-by-step process on how Rockathon came to be? What was the first thing, and when did you say, let's roll?
So Rockathon is one of those things that since it's an annual event, what's coming up. It's not a surprise to you. So we decided back in, I'm going to say May, that we were going to do this the week before Thanksgiving. That seemed to be traditionally when it was done, and it would give us enough time to plan it. We did go through 2 different Rockathon coordinators, and for various reasons could not take on the position, and we totally respect that, but the show must go on, the event must go on. So we eventually got to the point where about a month out, and that's when everything went into full overdrive, where we were building the 67-hour schedule, and that went off one direction, and we opened it up to anybody at the station to sign up for it. That's when we started really hardcore, hitting the ground running as far as reaching out to businesses in the area and asking for donations and that kind of a thing. That's also when we were putting out the calls for folks to That was when we were putting out the calls to bands. That's when also we had to talk with the higher-ups at the university. What makes this Rockathon different from previous Rockathons is we couldn't run a cable from the back of the soundboard directly into the station, because the station used to be just there. So now we added the extra element of we had to stream that as a remote. How does that work? So this has been several months in the making, but we went from a lot of it was filling out paperwork, and then about I'd say a couple of weeks before the event, 2 to 3 weeks, that's when we started testing all of the equipment. The week of, we tested absolutely everything end to end to make sure it would work. And then on the day of the first day of Rockathon, it was a Tuesday, we started around noon, and we used until 3 to get everything set up and running and make sure that actually we were able to be on the air, because there are a lot of moving parts, and you have to be flexible with that to be able to switch from, all right, now we're in a talk show about sports, to, okay, now we're going to have a 3-piece band on. What does that look like? And so we had to build that set up in a bit strange of a way, but ultimately, like I said, it's this process that starts months ahead of time and goes right down to the wire until we're rolling it. And then you're not done really until, until the money's counted, but also with the physical setup, we weren't out of there for a good 3 hours. Tearing down everything and then moving it all back to the station.
Okay, excellent. And you've been involved in other Rockathons. Mm-hmm. How is this one different, not only from like what was involved, but you actually being the head of the entire organization?
Well, Rockathons of the past were nice because I could just kind of drop in, do some radio in the cafe area, and then drop out. That's the joy of Rockathon. Anybody is involved, and the entire schedule's flipped on its head. When you're planning it, it's a bit of a different. It's a bit of a different beast, if you will, because you're thinking, does everybody know how everything works? And are we coming across clear? Are we coming across loud? Because this isn't the station here where everybody's used to, this is what it sounds over your headset. You're running a remote, essentially, and you have to make sure that the folks back home are able to hear it, as well as the folks that are in the hallway listening to it. So some of the things that I know we approach a little bit differently was we blocked out 6 hours at the beginning and said these are going to be performance times. And so B. Teal, who has some connections within the Pittsburgh music community, he reached out to everybody he knew, and whoever was available for those times piped up and said, all right, let's do it. And so it was one of those things where I tried to make this as collaborative an effort as possible, because I knew in Rockathon's past that was where your general managers by day 2 of Rockathon were completely beat, and I was trying not to get there. I mean, it's hard not to, because a lot of it's staying up that long. But I think another major difference is I was very aware of what hour we were, where we were, and who was on air at any given moment, because it's kind of like a bird that you've hatched and nursed and whatnot. All right, now it's time to fly, but you're still watching that bird to make sure it doesn't hit the ground, because it's your bird, man. So yeah, that's what I'd liken it to. It's like letting it leave the nest, letting the folks take on Rockathon.
And one final question, not really a question, but if there's anything you would like to add, you can add it now.
I think Rockathon as a whole is an amazing event for several reasons, not just because it is for such a great cause, but it also builds something of a community around radio. We're at the end, especially with the new studios, we're kind of at the end of campus on the first floor of a building not a lot of folks go to, and so to be able to build that kind of a community around radio and be able to interact with the folks that are listening to WPPJ, I think it's an amazing experience, and I think from both someone having to plan it, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about the station, and I've learned a lot about radio. So I think it's an amazing event from that aspect, because when folks ask the question, was Rockathon successful? That is such a hard question to answer, because the way I look at it, it's 3 different events. The first part is you're raising money for the Early Learning Institute. Number 2, you're building a community around college radio. And number 3, you're promoting this is what WPPJ means. And for a lot of folks, Rockathon's their only interaction with PJ. And so I want to make it a good one, and I think this year what we accomplished was exactly that. We built a community around college radio, and a fantastic charity benefited from it. And I don't know that I could ask for much more than that.
Excellent. Fantastic. Good shit.